Hey guys, welcome. Today I'm really excited to walk you through the leg extension machine. Now I know what you're thinking. You're probably thinking, why do we need a full breakdown on the leg extension machine? Don't you just sit in, kind of fling your legs up? Seems pretty intuitive, seems pretty simple. Yes, it does seem that way, doesn't it? And yet, so many people have so many questions about this machine, rightfully so. And so many people are actually hurting their knee health in this machine. So I really want to show you proper setup and execution so that we can make sure that we are taking care of our knees. And a lot of times people think, well, I'm just going in, I'm training quads. You're not just training this muscle though. You're training the attachment points. You're training the joints and the ligaments and everything that surrounds it. So many times people will sit down kind of doing stupid things with the leg extension machine to try to hit different points of their quads. And sometimes we can, and sometimes we can't. And sometimes the trade-off for what we get for these kind of stupid things that people are doing on this machine is the overall health of our knees in the long run. So remember, when you go into the gym and you're really excited to do some creative new thing that some influencer out there showed you, just keep in mind, you're not ever just training a muscle. You're training joints, you're training ligaments and tendons and all of those things that need to be taken care of. We're not just, strong, looking good in the gym today, but that we're taking care of our overall health tomorrow and the next day and in 5 years and in 10 years. You're not wobbling around trying to walk because of something stupid you've been doing in the gym. So I think it's actually really important that we go over some exercises that oftentimes people think are very basic and intuitive, and yet so many people on Instagram or whatever influencer is telling people to do it in ways that will hurt them in the long run. So yes, I do find it actually very important to go over the basics. But I'm gonna be showing you how to wisely use this machine to work the quads in a more short contracted position or in a more lengthened position, and what we can wisely manipulate with this machine to make it a really good tool for the quads. So let's get started. Okay, so with the leg extension machine, how it's traditionally used is that we are working the quads in a short or more shortened contracted position. So let me show you what I mean by that. At the very, very top, when you go up, this is usually where it's the most difficult. We have a little bit of hip flexion, we have knee extension here, and so it's making this top part pretty difficult. So that's usually why people utilize this machine, is because they are trying to work the quads in a more shortened position. Oftentimes, to work it more in a lengthened position, they're using things like the leg press and split squats or quad dominant squats. Typically, when people are setting up for this, they're setting up for working the quads in a shortened, more contracted position. So let me show you how to set up for that. And then I will also afterwards show you how we can set up for working more in the lengthened position. So keep in mind that there was a little bit of hip flexion and then there was that knee extension. So we're really working and moving and pivoting from this point here, from our knee. So that means our knee, our pivot point of our body, should really line up with the pivot point of the machine. So oftentimes the back of the machine will be way too far forward. And what that does is when people sit in, now all of a sudden their knee joint is here and the pivot of the machine is coming right there. So you will want to make sure that you adjust the back appropriately so that when you sit in, your knee is right there lined up with the pivot of the machine. Then we'll want to bring this down, and I want you to now look at my hips. So remember what I said about being in a slight hip flexed state, and now we're moving from the knee joint. Now sometimes people will say at the top here, if you want it to get more contracted, meaning that the muscle, the quads are shortening and coming together more, then lean forward at the hip. Remember, don't go like this from the back, but actually lean forward. Now, there is some truth to that, but we have to be careful, because if you lean forward way too much and then try to do a leg extension, that's as far as I can get up. So it can actually limit the range of motion. So although I'm not saying, if you really, really want to work it really, really shortened, don't lay back, but don't lay forward. We want to find a healthy range. Maybe there's a slight leaning forward at that hip, making sure that you can really get to that top and that you can get that fully contracted right there. Now, another thing that we can do to ensure the health of our knees. A lot of people are sitting in this machine and they have zero control and they're just like throwing things. And then they're wondering, why do my knees hurt? So this machine, you have to take it very controlled. And right here in this position, the hamstrings aren't at a position to really contribute to a lot of stability at that knee. It's gonna be more around here that they can do that. So we don't wanna launch out from the bottom. We want the bottom to be very controlled. That is going to help protect the knees. Another thing is we don't want the feet to be going facing each other or facing out. A lot of times people will say, oh yeah, face them out or in if you want to hit more of the outer or inner part of your quads. At the expense of what? You really want to hit one fiber more to the left or to the right, hoping you achieve that, hoping you get a little bit more hypertrophy, one fiber over, at the expense of what? At the expense of your knee health. So your knee is a hinge joint. It only goes like this. If we're going to load it, we need to have the load going directly against this hinge. So whichever way I'm going, if I'm going like this, it always needs to be coming down against that. Just like what we see here in the leg extension, when our feet are flexed and pointed, toes pointed up at the top, we're appropriately matching the resistance to this hinge joint. As soon as people start getting weird and start trying to get your toes pointed out or in, then all of a sudden we have this mismatch because the resistance is still coming straight down, but now it's coming at that joint at an angle. And that's where people can really hurt themselves. Maybe you feel fine today doing that. Maybe you feel fine tomorrow, but these things are built up over time. So we have to be really, really cautious. These are the stupid things that I'm seeing done in the gym. And what they're trading off in the long run is the health of their knee joint. So if you are already having issues with your knees or just really want to be smart and protect them, then you'll make sure that you line things up really well. You'll line up that resistance against that hinge of the knee. And also that you will take this movement in a much more controlled fashion and not just be flinging things up. So now we've talked about working the quads in a short and contracted position and getting the most out of that top position. We've talked about the overall health of the knee and how important that is and stupid things we can do to ruin that. Now I'm gonna walk you through something that I think is really fun. And it's if you want to utilize this machine to work the quads in a more lengthened position. So that would actually be making the bottom here the most difficult. It also would be lengthening out the quads by leaning back. So we do have one muscle, the rec fem of the quads, that crosses the hip joint. So what we do at the hip is really influencing the rec fem. So if we want to work the rec fem in a more lengthened position, we're not going to lean forward because remember that shortens it. We're going to lean back. In that case, you can actually set this all the way back, sit down, make sure that you've lined up the pivot, and now bring this down and make sure it's going all the way down. So many machines, you can actually set them at different ranges. You can set them up here or back here. And then if you lean back at the hip, now we have really lengthened out the rec fem. So now you can do this and you are working the rec fem in a more lengthened position. But keep in mind the physics of this machine is going to make the top part the most difficult, not the bottom part. So we're getting into a lengthened position, but we're not really making the lengthened position more difficult. So we have studies showing that working in a more lengthened position, but not just working, but making it more difficult and overloading this bottom position can bring about a little bit more hypertrophy. So if your goal is to build the quads, then you'll want to really put a ton of weight, maybe more than you're used to for the full range. Lean back, and maybe you want to do some partials, just half reps down here. Really going heavy, really pushing in to that half rep. And the range of motion is going to be small, but with the studies we have pointing to more hypertrophy, this can be a really awesome tool. So you can literally, in the same training session, start out by really overloading and working that lengthened position, leaning back like this, doing partial reps at the bottom. And then after 3 or 4 sets of anywhere between 8 to 12 of that, then lighten the weight a little bit, sit up, and now we're doing a completely different exercise, even though we're sitting right here in the leg extension machine. Now we're overloading and working more of that short and contracted position. How awesome is that? So this one machine, you can really get your 2 quad exercises for the day in, and you won't have to do any more quad work. It can just 2 smartly paired can be enough. So hopefully that has really helped you guys learn proper setup and execution of this amazing machine, what not to do, even though crazy influencers are out there saying to do it. We really want to protect the health of our knees. And also just fun ways to utilize this machine in the gym to work both the lengthened and the shortened position of your quads. So hopefully this has been really helpful for you guys. If you have any questions, let me know in the comment section below. Otherwise, go ahead and hit like and subscribe, and I will see you next time.